Hello and welcome to this Year 12 Assessment Webinar. I hope you enjoyed our video. Just watching it, remembering what we had to go through with all the masks on for a few years, and just glad that we're not in that situation again. Although I am talking to you with a cold, which is probably the consequence of not wearing masks anymore. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. So welcome. I'm going to take you through for about 30 or 40 minutes about assessment in Year 12 and Year 13. I will be on my own this evening. Apart from, in the background, I have VJ helping with the technical bits. He's also going to be popping up a poll for some questions we've got for you coming up in the presentation. I've had some questions, thank you, by email. I will try and answer those questions throughout the presentation. If you do have more questions, just pop them in the Q&A down there, you'll see it. And I'll answer them at the end of the presentation. Okay, I think we're ready to start. Hopefully this works. Okay, so what we're going to go through today, we're going to talk about the ALICE test that you had the data sent to you the end of the week before last. Look at how we use that data. Predictors, look at some chances charts, all the data I sent with you, how we use this data in target setting, how the teachers will start grading your children throughout the Year 12 and Year 13, and talk about some action plans and self-management skills. So there's a bit of a timeline for Year 12 and 13, just for grading, really there in parents' evenings. So now, obviously, in October, the ALICE test is completed with most, if not all, students now have had their baseline data. They will start doing their target grades. In fact, most students should have done their target grades by now. And teachers will start to enter what we call working at grades on the farm. By the end of October, by about half term, that should all be done. Upcoming parent consultations next month. So do keep looking at the farm for the latest grading information, and then you can have an informed conversation with teachers on the 2nd of November. And then again into the end of the year, we don't have a report at the end of Year 12. We have another parent consultation that comes from feedback parents saying that they really value the information they get in parent consultations. And then October this time next year, your children will be getting their university application grades, which is quite important, but very important, because these are the grades the teachers put on the transcripts to go to the university. So I'll talk a little bit about those. And then very important dates, mock exams in January 24. Sorry, that should be January 25. I should have edited that, and it should be May 25 is the final IB exams. So talk about the ALICE baseline test that your children did at the start of the year. This is run by Cambridge International Examinations. They've been running it for many, many years. They've got millions of pieces of data. Tens of thousands of students per year actually complete this test, and all the information is thrown together so we can come up with some very good information to help our students progress. And what does it do? It measures your children's ability. It measures their strengths and their weaknesses in terms of the areas which are measured within the test, projects performance, comparing to other students around the world and looking at how they performed. And I'll talk very much detail about that. And then at the end, we use what's called value added. We see how much value we've added on compared to what a standard school would do, the average school would do. There are 3 sections in the test: vocab, maths, and non-verbal. It measures developed ability. I think developed ability should read something like developed potential. What do we mean by that? Well, your children have a certain potential in each subject. Whether they realize that potential is another matter, but they have a certain potential in that subject. That potential is not fixed. They can develop that attention, that potential. A good example is that if your child does not have a large vocabulary for their age, their developed potential will be lower because they won't be able to answer in the correct manner in essays or in subjects like English or history. They need that vocabulary. So they need to develop their vocabulary so they increase their potential in all subjects. That's the way to look at this data. It's not fixed. The baseline data is not fixed. It can be developed in different ways, and I'll be talking about that. These tests that they do are computer adaptive baseline tests, which means that if the student gets a question correct, the questions get harder. If the students get a question wrong, the question gets easier. And it will carry on asking questions, in this case 23 questions, until it converges on a score, which it's pretty secure in the fact that it thinks if we ask a more difficult question, the student will get it wrong. An easier question, the student will get it correct. And it does have an uncertainty or tolerance bars with that as well to tell you where they think your child's score lies. Much better than a paper test, which are fixed questions. These questions are different for different students. So here's the fun bit of the evening. So we're going to ask you some vocab and then some maths, then some non-verbal questions. Now, I'd like you to answer, if you are taking part, answer all questions. Don't just duck out the maths questions like the last I just talked to year 10s and there was very few people answering the maths question, just to see what kind of percentage of you can get these questions right, so you can see what your children had to go through when they do these baseline tests. So first question there, these are vocab. So these are words given to you completely out of context, and then you have to guess the correct word on the right hand side, which closely matches the target word, which in this case is gingerly. Not so easy. So can you answer this question? I'll give you about 10 seconds. Okay, VJ, can we have the results? So we've got 6 people involved. Try and get a few more next time. But the answer, 67% went with cautiously, which is the correct answer. Well done. We can't see your names. We're not taking this data in. Don't worry about it. Totally anonymous. This might be an easier one for you. Can you find the meaning? If you got the first question wrong, the question gets easier. In the previous presentation, one person got this wrong. Which I hope they were messing about. Okay, BJ, I think that's enough time for this one. 100%, well done. 8 out of 8, answering it correct. Peerless. Okay, BJ, I think it's enough time. Oh, got more people involved. 82% you said peerless means friendless. Means incomparable is the closest one. You see, these are getting quite difficult, but a lot of your children can answer these questions really well. And this one's a really hard one. I'd be impressed if anyone got this. Okay, BJ. Oh, tough assignment, easy job, close to each other. It's an easy job. So well done to those two people. I'm going to ask you at the end, did anyone get all questions correct? So going to some of the maths questions. Now, maths is not about what you've learned in your maths lesson. There's no kind of circle theory or differentiation or whatever, logs or anything on this paper. It's about maths fluency. It's without a calculator. It's how quickly can you work with numbers and angles and fractions, because you need to be able to work quickly in an exam in different subjects. For example, my subject, physics, you need to have maths fluency. So this is why it transfers, your maths ability transfers to different subjects. Even things like percentages are needed in a lot of subjects. So this one here, hopefully you had enough time for that one. 100%, 10 out of 10. Excellent. We know our percentages. Fractions. Let's see if we can still get 11 of you or 10 of you answering. Okay, BJ. Okay, 2/3. Most of you got that correct. 6 out of 9 of you. Fractions. Oh, showed you the answer. Let's go back. Friend didn't see. Let's have the questions on VJ. I don't think we can do them out of order. Let's go, because I think we saw the answer, didn't we? Perhaps not. Perhaps they didn't have enough time. Okay, so 6/4 is the same. 6/4 is the same as 1.5. So this must be a quarter, or 1/4. Angles. Do you remember from school how many angles in a triangle? The total angle in a triangle? Okay, BJ. Okay, we're getting fewer and fewer people answering now. Perhaps I'm not giving you enough time on there. Let's see who got it right. 2 people said 35 degrees, 180 degrees in a triangle. So again, without a calculator. So this is a really good example of maths fluency. I mean, can you do that in your head? Do you recognize the pattern there that 15 is can be divided by 3 to make 5, and 45 can be divided by 3 to make 15. So it's 5.15, and it's times by 1,000. Oh, towards the answer. Okay. Yeah, most people getting that right. So we get these maths questions right. This functions. Give you a few seconds to do this one, like 20 seconds to do this one. So a lot of your children will be getting this right. So if you don't know what functions are, replace that FM on the left-hand side by those numbers in the columns. So the first one will be 2. And if FM is 2 and M is 0, what does that make P? Okay, BJ? 1 out of 1. We're getting fewer people answering. Yeah, so Q to the 0 is 1. Anything to the 0 is 1. And if this is 2, equals something times 1, so P is 2. Give you 20 seconds or so to do this. Okay, BJ, then we'll get this correct. Yeah, well done. That same person maybe getting 500. Excellent. So very quickly, if 70 is 14%, then what's the total percentage? Anyway, it won't depend. Can't remember to do it myself. Okay, so 70 is 14%, so it's a half. So 100 is 100%. It will be 500. Which times by 5, yeah. 14% is 70. 100% would be 500. Okay, that's maths done. Reflecting pictures. Now, some people find it's really easy to say, why are we testing on this? It's obvious, but to a lot of people, these aren't obvious. And what these are looking at is testing, can you move shapes in your mind? Can you do that, hold a shape in your mind or a pattern in your mind and look over to somewhere else? It's called visual memory or perceptive ability. Now, this is very, very important. If you're doing exams, for example, then you need to be able to hold information in your head while you're actually writing. So your working memory. Also, for subjects that evolve in a lot of patterns, like my subject, science, you need to work a lot with graphs. And that is information which is not in a literacy or numeracy, words or numbers. It's in a different form, like, for example, a graph. This is where the non-verbal information comes in. Okay, VJ? Bottom right is the favorite. There we go. Bottom right, well done. Okay, there's a little bit of logic here. Give you some time on this. You can see some of these questions are kind of like similar to what you get on an IQ test. So each of the letters does some kind of operation on the pattern, on the shape. Makes it smaller or flips it or fills it out. So you got to work out what K does. Okay, VJ? Oh, only one person going for this one. Hope everyone hasn't left. Correct answer. Well done. Number 4. Dice patterns. Can you work this out in your head? Which one is possible? Okay. Oh, sorry. Let's I clicked when I shouldn't have done. Let's see the answer. Oh, we got 60% for top right, and it's bottom right. So quite a difficult question. One person got that right. If you do answer all those questions right, let me know. That'd be quite impressive. See, the questions are not easy, and sometimes they are timed. Not all of them are timed. They just ask questions. You give you enough time until it converges to a right mark. But some exercises, like I think this non-verbal one, is the timed one as well. So you can see how hard these questions can actually get. So all of these scores are put together in those three areas: vocab, maths, and non-verbal. And it's standardized to everyone doing the test throughout the world, the tens of thousands of people doing it each year throughout the world. They're standardized into this bell curve here. 100 is average. Okay, that's a standardized score. So it works out where your child is amongst all the rest of the students, and bang in the middle is 100. West Island School, our average score is around about 110, which just shows the ability of our students is much higher than what we call the national average. And when I say national, because this is a UK-based system used in either UK schools or international schools which have a UK curriculum. So it's the average UK student. So our average student in West Island School is far more able than the average UK student. So the half students are between 90 and 110, 50% of them between 90 and 110. This is national sample throughout the world. And if you're over 110, you're in the top 25%. And as you get around to 130, 140, you're talking about 99th percentile if your scores are there. So this is the average West Island student, as I said, around about 110 for scores. And that will also, you've got this information sent home for you, hopefully. And you would see the percentile in these different parts of the test that your child is in. So 77 percentile means better than 77% of students doing the test. And in the top 23%, that also translates to. The maths and vocab alone give the ability score. So KEM have realized through many years of doing this that the best indicator of an outcome of the scorer, in this case IB, would be a score in vocab and a score in maths. That's because vocab is literacy and maths is numeracy. Literacy and numeracy are the two skills which you need to have the pillars of any education system. What we're going to look for, though, is if you've got a discrepancy in especially the vocab and math score, if one is much higher than the other, because that will show you where your limiting factor is, the thing that you need to work on. If your vocab is lower, then you obviously need to work on your vocab. So this is actual one of your child's pieces of data, shows it very well. So when we get this kind of profile of the maths and the non-verbal a lot higher than the vocab, it's one of two reasons. The first reason is we have a lot of students working their second, third, even fourth language whose English vocab hasn't progressed to the standard, if you like, of their maths, but it is progressing. And we see massive progression in these students' ability in vocab. So I was talking about before about developed potential. This is a prime example of, in this case, potential would increase as the student develops their vocab ability. And this happens, we have a program throughout year 10 and 11 called WSCAL and EAP, and also year 12 and 13 we have IBSP. And what the aim of this program is to build up this vocab ability and to increase the literacy, English literacy there. The other example of why this would be the case, quite interesting, if it's not a second language student or third language student I'm talking to with this profile, I ask them one simple question: do you read? The answer is always no. If you don't want a high vocab score, then don't read. That's simply it. Or should say it the other way around. The more you read, the more your vocab will improve. I was reading a book the other day, which was quite challenging for me. It's called The Road, and it had words in it which I kind of thought I knew, but I needed to look up. Oh, I understand the meaning of that word now. Perhaps I could use that word in the correct sense when I do an assessment. So you need vocab because you're going to use these words in different assessments, especially in assessment heavy subjects, of course, English, but also things like history, where you need to write essays, or economics and business. You're going to need to use this vocabulary in the correct sense. So you only build up vocabulary by reading it in context, reading in books, reading in lots of different contexts. Because as you saw from the exercise before, you think you know the meaning of a word, but you actually don't know the meaning of the word. Your thoughts are wrong. So reading helps you understand what that meaning of the word actually is, so that you use it in its correct context when you're answering exam questions, or when you're going to university and doing assessments in university. So if this is your profile, and it's not because you're a second, third language learner, it's because you don't read enough, and you should be reading more and more challenging text, so you're picking up new vocabulary as you go along. Same with if the maths is lower, then it would mean that your limiting factor is your maths ability. It may be a bit more difficult to build up your develop potential in that, but the more maths work you do, the more number work you do, the more practicing with maths you do, the better you will get at being fluent with maths. So as I say, this ability grade comes from the vocab and maths. It's not an average. If you've got high vocab and maths, like this next example, you can see here, high vocab and maths, gifted student, the actual ability score is even higher. So it's not an average, it's called a ranked average. And the non-verbal doesn't take any part in the ability score. So what do we use the ability score for? Well, we use it to produce these, if you like, predicted grades or baseline predictors. It's not a great word for it, predicted grades, because it's not predicting anything about, I won't say your children, I'll say your performance, and I'm talking to the students, not to the parents. So they build up, what they're doing is saying, all they're saying is what happened to all the students who have done these baseline tests and had the same ability score as you. So in this case, I've used an example here. Let me move something. And we look at the top of this example here. It says baseline score at the top. It says 100.3. So this is a bang in the middle student in the national sample. Baseline score 100.3. So what Chem do is they look at all the students who have a baseline score of 100 and say, what happened to their IB score? What IB score did they get in the end? Out of tens of thousands of pieces of data. And actually, I'm looking at this right-hand side here. So in English A, language and literature, all students who got 100, around about 100, this is what they went to achieve. It will say for this particular student that their predicted point is 5.5 of an IB score. And that's somewhere obviously between a 5 and a 6. And it will round it up. You don't need to really worry about that. Let's say it's 5.5, somewhere between a 5 and a 6. But that doesn't mean this student is going to get a 5.5. It means that's the average of what other students before them have got. Because 11% of them went on to get a level 7. So 11% of students who had a baseline score of 100, remember that comes from this score, the ability score here. This one's 142. It's back to oh, sorry. Yeah, this one's 112, would be more like the average student in West Island School. And this one is back here, this student got 100. So 11% of students who did this exam subject in IB go on to score, 11% of them go on to score a level 7. So if this particular student is willing to work hard, they have definitely got the potential to get a level 7. And you can see lots of students outperform their baseline predictor by 2 grades. That's fine. This is why we never allow these grades to go out of school. We don't report on these grades in terms of performance. We look at performance in the class in exam-based syllabuses and exam assessments. We don't look at these baseline grades to report to you. These are just there as information. So it's the average grade which students who had the same ability score as you went on to get. All it is, it's a bit of data. Leave it, use it for interest, or don't use it at all. It doesn't really matter. We don't report these outside school. We don't share these with universities or anything like that. And we never will. So all these right-hand side charts here, they tell you what the, if you like, the distribution of IB scores were for this ability student in the past. So they're slightly different, but they're coming around about 5, 5.5, 6. It would say that you're more chance of getting, for example, in a 6 in English than you have getting a 6 in music there. It's just a bit of data. It doesn't say anything about you whatsoever. On the right-hand side there, we use a different baseline, which is quite interesting to compare the two. This baseline is average GCSE score. This one here is an average GCSE score of 6.7. That's on the 9-point scale. So 6.7, this average, what the student got an average GCSE. Not on English GCSE, not on maths GCSE, but taking all their GCSEs together. It's a very, very blunt measurement, but it has to be a common measurement to make sure the sample is standardized. It doesn't look at what exam board the GCSE was, whether it was international or whether it was a UK-based GCSE. It's a score, it's an average score, very, very blunt instrument. But the students who completed English language literature at IB, who scored 6.7 on average in previous years, went on to score these grades here. So you can see with this student, their predicted points from average GCSE score is slightly higher than a predicted point from their baseline, ability baseline CAB-T test. So I would say for this student, bit of interesting information, that they did really well in their GCSEs. They outperformed their ability baseline at GCSEs slightly, not by a massive amount. So they did, you can tell they did quite well at their GCSEs. We see some people, especially with their ability way over their GCSE points, who maybe didn't do as well as they should have done at GCSE. So you can see it when you go into the farm, you can see your child's baseline data, GCSE baseline and ability baseline as a decimal point here. I'm not going into the maths of why it's important to have the decimal point, but it is the right way to do it, because when we measure value added, it's too blunt saying just a 5 and a 6. So this student on ability baseline is around about 5.7, between a 5 and a 6 average score that students in previous years with the same ability achieved in biology in this case. So it's interesting information. And what we've asked your children to do is to come up with a target grade. So why have we done this? What's the point of the target grade? Well, looking at studies that have been done over many years and meta-analysis of these studies, one of the most effective, if not the most effective thing you could do as a school is to involve the students in their own grading. Why? Because they get to understand what's the difference between a level 5 and a level 6. They start asking questions. They start looking at assessment criteria. It's very much based on their performance, where their performance is now, what they need to do to get to the next level. The fact is they own it. And I've talked to your children about this. They have to own their grade. So if they're getting, if they're getting a level 5 and they say they should be getting a level 7, they're getting a level 5. They need to own their grade. They need to say, well, what do I need to do to get to the level 7 I want to do? It can't just be happening to them. I'm getting a level 5 because it's my grade. It's what I've achieved. It's not because the test was too hard or the teacher didn't teach that. All the excuses that we hear time and time again, I didn't go over that in class. It's owned by you. It's owned by the student. That's your grade. You need to do something to improve it. Nobody else. It's up to you. And that's what I've been saying to the students. And we know if we can get students to own their assessment, they'll do something about it, rather than be forced to do something about it. So these are not in yet. I took these off farm today. So the grades are not in yet. They will be in by the end of the month, end of this month, working at grades. So I told you by October next year, these university application grades would be in. So they're obviously not in there at the moment. They start going in at the end of year 12, and they can be changed up to around about now in year 13. But don't be surprised in October 2024, when these grades go in, if they're pretty similar to the working at grades, because that's what the teachers will be using. I'm going to be making sure I emphasize to teachers that, because I've got a lot of feedback from students who have been going through this process who are currently in year 11. And they're telling me that the thing they don't like and parents don't like is when these working at grades or current grades, if you like, sawtooth, they're flying away on a level 6, and then suddenly they do a test and they get level 2 in the test. And so their working at grade changed to level 2. we'll make sure this doesn't happen. So this working at grade is going to be more like a grade point average. So we're looking at the average grade in assessment will be going into this working at grade, not the latest assessment, although some teachers may weight it a little bit more towards the latest assessment for obvious reasons, especially if they're covering more materials there. But hopefully you will get no surprises, because these are live grades, and they will, as soon as they go in, they'll be there. Yeah, but I say, don't be surprised if that UAG is the same as the working at grade, because we've got to be honest as teachers to give an honest perspective of what we think students will get at the end of the course. So it's important these working at grades, when they first go in, that the students are working hard to get these grades. So apologies for this, but because we did this, we've done a trial year doing our grading this way with year 10s. I've got no screenshots to show you for years 12 and 13 to do it. So it's the same system, but I'm just using GCSE grades here instead of IB grades. So this student here is currently in year 11, and you could see how their working at grade has progressed steadily. We don't want to sawtooth, remember, we don't want to go up and down or oscillate. We want a steady kind of grade point average kind of idea here, working its way through. Okay, so it can improve. It doesn't have to stay the same. So we ask we've asked teachers to make sure that they review the grade every 45 days, so you know it's up to date, and we timestamp it as well when it was last time sent. So you'll be able to hover over the grade and see when the teacher has timestamped it to say, yeah, this is the grade. A lot of time I get, and you may have had it before, I get my tutees saying to me, I say, well, you've got a grade C there. And it's no, it's not really grade C. I've done an assessment recently. It's more like a grade B, but the teacher hasn't updated it. Until it's updated on here, it is a grade C, because the teacher's got all that information. So every 45 days, it should be updated, and it should be updated live. So what you see there should be correct. So what we're going to ask students to do is, instead of doing reflections, I've surveyed again the current year 11, and it seems like reflections weren't too popular with them. I'm sure they have developed massively from doing reflections from year 7 all the way through. But now we're going to take reflections away from year 12, and year 12 will no longer need to do reflections. What they will need to do instead is forward-looking statements or action plans, rather than reflective action plans at the end of the term or at the end of the year. So my aim is by the end of by December, by the end of this term, that all students would have written an action plan in all of their subjects in year 12. So an action plan would look something like this, but again, this is talking about GCSE. So it makes the student talk to the teacher about their progress and about how they can improve. And then the student will note down the conversation they've had with the teacher, or the points for improvement. I've even had students which I've, after an assessment, gone over an assessment, let's say it's a test-based assessment with physics, and I get them to write on the front of the paper the targets, that what they need to do to improve by looking through the test paper. What happens, unfortunately, sometimes they lose that, and so they haven't got those targets on there anymore, and that information is lost. So actually now, what I've started to do in my own classes, I've started to get them to write a target plan on Google Classroom, and they just keep adding to that all the time or changing it. But now we're going to actually put it on the form, so you can read that as well. As a parent, you can read what their action plan is in each subject and talk to them about it. So in my point of view, I'd really like you to keep looking at this and talk to your children about their action plan, about what they're going to do. Is it detailed enough? And SMART targets here: specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, time-based targets. Because they'll be talking to the teacher about these targets, this action plan. So I'd like parents also to be involved in that process and look at these action plans, because it's just about getting better and getting towards this target grade. Another thing that year 12s are going to do is this self-management skills. They've been doing it, I think they've been doing it in year 11 as well. So it's just to say, are they meeting their self-management targets, like handling work at acceptable standard, organizing their notes? It's not so important at year 12. We hope we hope that students have got to the point where they're able to manage their own workload. But it could be relevant here. And if you click on, when you can see these self-management skills, hover over them, it'll tell you which ones are strengths and which ones are areas for improvement. And if you hover over this little blue radar diagram here, you'll get something like this. And this will show you how the teachers have assessed your child's self-management skills in each term. And you'll see different diagrams with different terms, different lines for different terms. And we'll get students to self-assess where they think they are with this. Something we use more lower down the school, but it has merit also in Year 12. Okay, I think that's about it from me. I'm going to look in the Q&As now. I've got some. Okay, so one of the questions apparently I haven't answered. Who should I talk to if feeling like things are going off the rails? Well, the first point of call is your child's tutor and head of year. So head of Year 12 is Miss Jane Cunliffe. And so it's, I'm sure you got the email, but it's Jane Cunliffe at wis.edu.hk. And she will be able to help. We have an extensive tracking program. All this data goes into our systems and we track progress. We have already had one data point where it's called early intervention grade. So if your child was struggling in a subject, that what we call the guidance and achievement team, the G&A team, will have looked at that already and be putting in their own action plan with your child. But if you haven't heard anything from teachers, there's 3 points of contact. If you think it's generally, then talk to the tutor or the head of year, or email both of them. If it's in a specific subject, just contact the teacher about that subject. If you need any more advice on that, then just drop me an email, either Michael Williams or Mike Williams at wis.edu.hk. Let's have a look at some questions we got here. You can still put some questions in if you still have something to ask. What's the accuracy of the ALICE projecting the final IB result in WIS in the past? It's an extremely difficult question, because what do you mean by accuracy? It's not meant to be predictive what your child will get. All it's saying is that's the average grade students in previous years have got who are the same ability, or more exactly have the same ability score as your child. I have had a look at it. Well, I can't remember exactly, but it's on average, it's a grade out. And that's on average, it's a grade out. So you're probably going to get 40% of students spot on. Probably 30% of students 1 grade out, and probably 20-30% of students maybe more than 1 grade out from that. It really doesn't matter, because it's just a piece of information. Because if you're really good at a subject or really like it, example was music I talked about before, you can ignore your baseline grade and say, well, I'm really good at that subject, I really like it, I work really hard in it, so I'm going to get a level 7 in that, even though it says my baseline's a level 5. So it doesn't really matter. It's a piece of data, it's just a piece of information. Take it or leave it. It's never reported outside school. It's only reported to you as parents, because if we collect data on your child, we need to send it to you to share that with you. Are there any more quick last questions? I think I've answered everything that's there. Not many questions in here. Okay, thank you for joining me on this Tuesday evening. I hope that was quite informative for you. Do drop me a line if you need me to answer anything else. We are recording this video, and I will I'll send this out by email, and also put it on our website as well. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Here's to the success of your children in all that they do in Year 12 and 13, and I'll see you around. Thank you very much.